Hey, folks, in this podcast episode, we're going to be talking with Brenda Milis from Adobe about some mainstream creative trends that set the stage for your work in 2021. This is Twitter. Hey, welcome back to another episode of the podcast. I am your host, Frederick Van Johnson. Today on the show, I am honored and excited to have my friend Brenda Milis here from Adobe. Brenda is the principal of visual trends at Adobe. She's going to be talking about what that means. And also, we're just going to dive in really deep on just what the zeitgeist of creativity looks like and how those kind of changes and trends might influence your work, whether it be photography, design, video, etc. Brenda, welcome to the show. How are you doing?
Hi, I'm great. Thanks for having me. I always love talking about the trends, especially with creatives.
Yeah, I know. And there's a ton of trends. I'm excited to talk about this stuff because it's, when you and I talk, it's almost like once a year you and I talk, right? And,
exactly.
your team, well, I'll let you say it. What does your team do? Like, what is the principle of visual trends at Adobe? What's your purview?
Well, my role basically is to help both creatives, in other words, people who want to contribute to stock and make money from the pictures they make, and as well as clients, because the clients I work with are creative professionals, understand the kinds of imagery that is interesting to viewers and consumers, the kind of images that people look at, get their attention, and really retains viewer interest and engagement. But also not to just say, hey, this is what's hot, not just to do that, but to really give context, cultural, social context to each of these trends so that it really makes sense to creatives. So they really understand not just what is selling, but why is it selling? Because that really adds a lot of kind of power to the producer of the visuals.
Yeah, and I'm curious. I'm sorry. When you look at this from a commercial, because I see it as kind of two sides of a coin. There's a commercial side where I'm a creative and I'm creating work that I want it to be relevant and culturally significant to right now and what's happening on the planet right now. And then on the non-commercial, let's call it the advanced amateur or consumer side of it, those creatives also want to create work that resonates with their audiences. Does this serve both of those masters?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that we're all pretty aware, have been for some time, that we're living in a world that changes very quickly. And of course, with 24/7, content streaming, that not only shifts the creative landscape more quickly than ever, but it also shifts viewer engagement with content more quickly than ever. So I think there are a lot of people out there who are creatives who would just like to understand, well, what's trending, thus the creative trends, and why, and how does it relate to the work I'm doing or the work I'd like to develop? So one of the things to think about as we talk about creative trends, and we'll focus on visual trends in this conversation. One of the things that I want people to think about is that there's never an idea that all of the trends would be relevant to any one producer, any one photographer or videographer, or any one company even. It's just that maybe one, maybe two of the trends will really resonate and align with your own style, with your own voice, your own creative voice. And that's really what we want to help contributors or help artists plug into, like, oh, I see how this use of color or this topic really aligns with the work I love, a work or maybe a project I've been thinking about doing. And now it actually kind of is almost a strategic tool, not just for making money, but to really plan your next shoot.
Yeah. Does it, when someone looks at these trends, and we're going to dive into the report shortly, when someone looks at these trends, should they say it's a newer photographer that wants to make sure that their body of work and their book and their work is relevant, so when they present it to somebody, the reaction will be, oh, this person is plugged in, they understand what's going on. This is a resource that those folks can look to as well, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I think it really is. It's for creatives of all levels, and that's what you'll see as soon as we dive in. You'll see that visual trends in particular are, I think they resonate with virtually every audience. These trends have mainstream appeal. So a lot of the work I do really on a daily basis, I work with a global forecasting company called WGSN. I'm everywhere in media, social platforms. So I'm looking at so many reports and so many projects, but I won't develop something as a visual trend until it really feels relevant to mainstream audiences. Because again, I'm here to help creatives of all types, but also to help commercial artists sell their work. So what these visual trends really kind of present is something that may have started off as a very niche artistic practice maybe 3 years ago, but that I've been studying, or my colleagues have been studying the development, watching it scale until we see all sorts of data. We even have proprietary Adobe Stock search data to confirm our findings around, searches that align with each of the trends, to watch those things scaling. So it's a lot of qualitative and quantitative data. And as you'll see when we go into it, these do have broad appeal and can be practiced in many ways. I think that might be one of the things that's interesting about our conversation today. These aren't super, super specific techniques. If we were talking about motion trends today, there might be a little more technical editing aspect, but visual trends can be approached in so many ways. And that's why I think it's an exciting conversation for this audience.
In this year this past year, has been sort of unprecedented in terms of the things that we cover. I mean, whether it's political or, pandemic related, how has those sort of big things that impact the planet affected the creativity of the
100%, 110%. And then we'll go into it. It's everywhere in the visual trends. And I will say that when I first really began tracking creative projects, looking for patterns, I usually start right about the middle of the year, right about June, because otherwise it's premature. At first, I was wondering how I would actually parse out trends, because we were all living in this pandemical shutdown state with, crazy things happening all the time, but really a lot of creative projects looking and feeling the same, having a very similar message of support. But then again, as I dug deep and wide and the year played out, and we began to see, actually we'll go into the first trend right now, called the Compassionate Collective. I think as we all slowly made our way through the crazy changes and events of 2020 rather, I think there began to be a real reckoning, not just for me, for everyone, around the very diverse situations and challenges presented to different people and communities and identities. And that's where, if you don't mind, I can start with the first visual trend called the Compassionate Collective.
Yeah, please do. I have your slides up on the screen. And for folks that are listening to the podcast, I would encourage you to come over to the site or the YouTube channel and check out this video to see the visuals. But we'll talk through it as well. Go for it. I have Compassionate Collective up on the screen now.
Yeah. So I would say this trend absolutely has its roots in recent years, growing concern and interest and prioritization around social and environmental issues. That's not new here, but I would say because of the widespread impact of COVID-19 and, of course, activism calling for change to systemic racism and social inequalities this year, this absolutely pushed through the roof, absolutely scaled the prioritization around civic responsibility and civic support. What really, to me, defines this as its own trend for 2021 is the stress on community. With social distancing and quarantine and isolation, there just became a huge, almost immediate collective yearning to connect and to support. So very quickly, we saw the sense of kind of compassion, acts of kindness, not just for people we know and love, but for people we don't know. So what I really saw happening throughout summer was we collectively began to understand that we're not, quote, all in this together. It's not a same situation, that that 2020 presented us through the global health pandemic, but that there was a huge range of challenges faced throughout the year. And so what I began to see in the summer was brands stepping up and supporting these kind of new values, communicating diverse and inclusive experiences and situations around how we can support one another, how we can come together even while we're apart. If you're looking at the slides here, you'll see that people are either wearing masks or look to be maybe in a quarantine pod, or our family members, or it's a detail of holding hands, so that we're approaching the representation of building community, supporting one another in a variety of ways. It's something I think about a lot, because I think about, with COVID kind of increasing and increasing and increasing, and this being a global situation, if you want to show social distancing or masks, it depends on where you are and who you're shooting for. But we're seeing a real demand for a variety of masks, quarantine pods, etc. So there is a range, but it really is about kindness and supporting one another in a variety of ways. You see here in the picture, there's a picture of a few people, probably a family, just painting a mural. You see a still life of a megaphone, which of course is a conceptual, simple, powerful still life for taking action, activism. Just possibly a mother and daughter or friends hugging, so simple, different, a variety of ways to just show how do we support each other day to day and in our communities.
I love that. And are you seeing like putting on your crystal ball or pulling up the crystal ball
over my head?
Have these trends, like with the mask wearing and the elbow bumps and all that stuff, are we seeing those trends as a permanent sort of indelible mark on how things are just going to be going forward? So creatives need to just lean into it.
I would use the word long-term rather than permanent. And I speak directly to clients all the time. And what they're really looking for is a range. They're saying, look, we're not going to choose pictures and create campaigns where everyone's wearing a mask. What we might have is, say, 6 pictures or 6 video clips, where in one video clip or 2 out of the 6, there are people wearing masks. And then in the others, people aren't. So the message I'm getting is variety. And when I talk to stock artist contributors, I say, look, shoot with and without. That's your winning bet. Do both, and casting, a lot of these pictures could just be like, hey, here's my sister and her boyfriend. Quarantine pods are pretty normal now. People are shooting their family members. They're also shooting from far away. So this kind of image or imagery, this trend is absolutely practicable to produce during this time, even of social quarantine. It's really about cast who you know and shoot where you are. As you see, one of these pictures is 3 really cute kids doing yoga, just 3 mats. It's probably somebody's backyard or front yard. They're wearing masks, and it's really lovely. It's really simple and sweet. So it's really the photo quality. You're not seeing big events or big gatherings here.
You know what? I'm curious. I wonder, again, with the crystal ball, like,
Sure. I wish I had a crystal ball. My job would be so much easier.
I know. Trust me. Right? I need a time machine. If you could have the crystal ball, I'll take the time machine. We'll work together.
Exactly.
I wonder, when I look at movies even, or any kind of media, visual media these days, I don't know if it's just me, but it's instantly time stamped. Because you say, whoa, look at those people in a crowd. That would never happen. So this must have been taken before, 2020. Is there a fear, do you think, from a creative standpoint, of time stamping and dating your work? Like, oh, look at those bell bottoms. Clearly, that was the 70s,
That's such a good question. And yeah, absolutely. And that's why I'm saying to photographers and videographers, shoot both. A picture of a family doing something together, that's not going to go out of style. Now, will masks stop being used? Eventually, yes. I think people are going to be looking for and buying, using pictures of people with masks for quite some time, at least through 2021. But will the demand lessen? Yes, it will. But it's still being actively looked for. So again, shoot both. If you are actually producing a shoot, you can shoot two types of pictures, and then you have a win-win situation. If everyone stopped shooting people wearing masks and social distancing, the stock collections would be in a horrible place and space, because clients really are still looking for this. And again, we see this for the long term. Yes, hopefully and positively, shrinking. But for now, for quite some time, COVID will be with us less and less, but people are going to be social distancing for quite some time, depending on the place, the event, the location, and the region where you are.
Yeah, I love it. Okay, cool. Let's continue.
Okay, very different. Mood boosting color. This is one of my favorites because it's so fun. This is the one trend that actually just presented itself to me. No crystal ball or actually research was really needed. I mean, of course, I went and did research, but I began to see again this summer, picture after picture on social, in commercials, on YouTube, just everywhere I turned. Well, I'm in New York. I could still take walks. Mm-hmm. Everywhere I turned, I would see imagery that wasn't just bright color, but had a full spectrum, a rainbow, if you will, of color. And it was shocking to me, just not only how prevalent across all industries, all types of brand messaging and companies and ads, not only how prevalent this kind of spectrum of beautiful bright color was, but in fact, how happy I was to see it. Now, I work with a lot of people who are color experts. One of our partners at Adobe Stock is Pantone. And also a lot of color reports coming from WGSN, our global forecasting partner. But it doesn't take an expert to know, but I did, of course, back it up with research that, there is an actual color psychology, and these bright, vibrant color combinations really do affect viewers' well-being. And suddenly it made so much sense to me sitting there in my own apartment in Brooklyn, bored to death with the monotony of the quarantine, that these colorful pictures are really making my day. And think about it. If you're a creative, basically either, physically, socially isolating, or your production is on pause, for example, color is a really simple but powerful choice that you can make and you can produce no matter where you are, right? Mm-hmm. One of the pictures we're seeing, for those of you who are seeing the visual part of this, is that looks like a couple of really cool, possibly friends, each in a bright sweatshirt against a bright wall. It has a kind of a simple, graphic, vibrant punch. That would be easy to go shoot, somewhere outdoors. But you're also seeing illustrations, 3D rendering. And so there's so many ways, and picture or photography, there's so many visual types where you can produce this kind of beautiful rainbow-like spectrum of color. One more thing, though, that is absolutely crucial to talk about. So what I'm saying basically is this is a visual trend that is inspirational, playful. You're not just engaging your viewer, you're making them feel good. Like that's a win-win, of course. But there is also a kind of activist element here. We're seeing a lot of BIPOC artists and activists, and very much in commercial work, use the color black in addition to this full spectrum color, really shifting kind of traditional public perception of black not being a color to show that it's part of all color. It's full of all color, and add this sense of joy, strength, positivity to the black expression of experience. And it's just been so inspiring and exciting to see that activist element expressed joyfully, right? What a wonderful type of message to see in such a tough year. So I've just been really excited about it. Visco, a lot of whose contributors contribute to Adobe Stock, they actually launched an initiative called hashtag Black Joy Matters on their Visco app, which is really worth checking out.
I'm curious about I have so
Sure.
many questions for you, Brenda.
It's
So
like,
many
yeah.
questions. So, hey, we're not going to get to all this, all of my questions, because I want you to dive back into this. But when I look at this, I see vibrant colors, and which is kind of indicative of just Africa and Black Americans, and it's just the vibrancy and the color and the music and all that stuff. And I'm also curious about font usage, though. So the nerd in me wants to know: is that part of your world, looking at the sort of usage of fonts and what fonts people are gravitating to?
I am not a font expert, and I wish I was more. I mean, I have the wonderful situation of working with Adobe font and typography leads. So one of the things that's so great about putting together this whole creative trend report is it's not just me, doing my research. Once I have kind of my basis of all my trend research, I work with Behance, I work with DVA at Adobe, and I work with all the Creative Cloud app leads and marketing to get their feedback, to see where I need to grow, where I need to shift, so that every Adobe Creative Cloud app is aligned with these findings. So yes, typography plays into this quite a bit.
Yeah, well, if you have any say with folks on that font team, please tell them to strike Comic Sans from
yeah, of course.
from every Adobe product.
Oh yeah, I'll ask that anyways. That's fine.
All right, cool. Well, let's continue. What else? This is so good. Thank you for doing this.
Yeah. So the next visual trend, this is the third of the 4 visual trends, is called comfort zone. My nickname for it is 360-degree home life, because that is really quickly, sadly, where we found ourselves in early spring of 2020. And one of the things I want to just say going into this is that in recent years, it's not just the pandemic, but really in the last several years leading up to 2020, we really started talking a lot about, or I started talking a lot about, home as a hub. We really did see a huge growth over the last few years of people, especially adults, and especially millennials, spending more time at home. Think about, because there's entertainment streaming, for example, there is fitness at home. So a lot of people already were kind of turning the home into more of a place where they merged their public and private lives, entertaining at home more and more. So I think it's interesting to know that this isn't just like something that happened overnight. There were already these companies and products and services being geared towards home life, like, Fresh Direct, delivering your groceries. That's not new. But of course, with our lives shutting down during the pandemic and home becoming the only place where we conduct our activities, we saw this crazy flurry of products and services, just hit the market. And as people stuck at home, all of us, we all kind of did as much of a pivot, as quick of a pivot as we could, to find ways to kind of organize our lives, to have different parts of our lives, again, to have some private life, to have some professional life, to figure out spaces. So it's routines, but it's also really become rituals too. And one of the things for contributors and artists that's good to know is, look, if you're at home, you can shoot this material, and it's not going away anytime soon. We're so happy the vaccine is very slowly but very steadily being distributed, and people are starting to get vaccinated. But let's face it, many of us are going to continue to work from home, work out from home, enjoy the pleasures we discovered, cooking. I'm actually a very good cook, it turns out.
So am I. I know exactly how to punch those buttons on the microwave.
But those things won't just go away. So this type of imagery of finding comfort, of finding connection, connection, of course, can be to yourself through yoga or meditation, connection with our family. You see a woman, with a musical instrument, but also with a pet, connection with our pet. So it's really about, the reason it's called comfort zone is different ways, different activities, different moments, different family structures. We're not just talking about a single generation nuclear family in that kind of traditional archetypal stereotypical sense, multi-generational families, alternative structures, single moms. So really content that shows all different lifestyles and identities and the things we do at home. And again, to me, this is exciting because yes, we're slowly going outside and traveling again, but we'll always come home. And all of this stuff that we do now is a long-term part of our lives and our interest. It's something we've cultivated. And so this type of imagery remains in very high demand for 2021.
Wow, love this. I love this. This is so helpful. This is so
cool.
helpful from this, because I just look at this comfort zone page and I see the muted colors and kind of earth tones and the warmness of home. These are the colors that my house is kind of decorated in, kind of warm earth tones. So I totally get it. Yep.
Yeah. And again, it's open to everybody, hopefully has a home, hopefully, and so if you're a photographer feeling frustrated, or an illustrator, clearly, but you're at home, you can shoot where you live. And by this, we actually mean it literally. There's that cliche saying, shoot what you know. Now it's not just shoot what you know, but shoot where you live. This is type of visuals that people want to use because it reflects our lives right now.
Yeah, no, for sure. Really good.
Yeah.
Cool.
So the fourth visual trend for 2021 is, like, I've started calling it the flip side of the coin to comfort zone because it's related. It's the same coin. It's called breath of fresh air. And we see the relationship here as we have been forced, honestly. We've been urged and we have been staying indoors so much for so many months. Our desire to go outside, obviously to travel, but even, just local hiking, our desire for the regeneration of outdoor experience has absolutely soared. It's not a surprise, it's a reality. And so we see company and brand after brand showing us images that express that kind of regeneration, revitalization, just of literally a breath of fresh air. This can be landscape photography, this can be still life, this can be travel, but it's also just the cultivation of nature. You don't have to live far out in the country. It can be a suburban barbecue. It can be potted gardens on your windowsill if you live in an urban center, or, great potted plants on your stoop. It's really about visuals that bring us that sense that we all need of balance and regeneration from elements of nature. Mm-hmm. And so what's interesting to me is it doesn't demand that we have these big, epic travel shots, but you can. Remember, there's audiences all over the world. Those are, of course, more inspiring than ever. It could just be a woman at the beach solo. Like I said, people in the backyard, anything that shows, that kind of relief, relaxation that we absolutely need to find our balance, to find our center, to find a sense of calm in the world. So comfort zone and breath of fresh air really are the two flip sides of the coin. And again, this type of imagery can be shot anywhere because there's so many variations on it. If you're actually looking at the slide that I'm presenting, there's even a picture of a man sitting in a big, beautiful window in what looks to be his apartment with potted plants on the outside, just basking in this quiet moment as, rays of sun hit his face. And that just feels like such a beautiful exhale moment or inhale moment.
Yeah.
So this type of imagery is absolutely in very high demand, and it completely ties in with the ongoing discussions, necessary discussions around the environment, climate change, and of course, sustainability. These are not conversations or issues that are going away pre, during, or post-pandemic. These are things that we care about and are consistent, and we will need imagery to address them. So that's all part of breath of fresh air.
I love that. And it just kind of makes me think that the pendulum swings in both directions, right? And I think the pent up demand for travel and just being outside and outside of the house, from a creative or a stock photography standpoint, it seems like that's going to be in demand a lot. It's, the travel industry, people just, I know myself, I'm thinking, wow, I've always wanted to go to X, Y, and Z places. And as soon as I can go, I'm going, right? And I think a lot of people may have that same sentiment. So yeah, I get it. That's awesome.
And again, it's shoot what you know, shoot where you are. There's demand for, like I said, epic vistas, absolutely beautiful, what we would call, I'll just say exotic travel, depends on where you actually are. But, me, I'd love to go to Bali right now. That's not going to happen for a while. But also in demand are, urban garden cityscapes, so anywhere you are, it's that notion that we all have just grown so cherish the cultivation of nature, that it can be gardening, it can be being out in a big city park, it can be urban, country, or suburban. All of it is relevant, and all of it is really popular and in demand right now.
I love it. Cool. Yeah. You're blowing my mind, Brenda. You're blowing my mind.
Oh, so funny. So those are the 4 visual trends, which I think we'll be focusing on today. We're not going to go into the more technical design and motion trends, which I think are a little more technical. But maybe we can do a follow-up with those if you'd like.
We absolutely should. Yeah, because I'm very curious about that, especially on the motion side, right? So on all of it, because whether we like it or not, photographers are no longer just photographers. We're kind of multimediagraphers, right? So we capture stills and video and sound and words and all this stuff. And in a lot of people that I'm seeing, my trends, I'm seeing people are starting to lean into synthesizing those things together in service of an overall story versus here's a pretty photo I took. It's now I see people are thinking more of, okay, let me tell a story using the best tools. And I think the trends that you and your team kind of draw a circle around will help guide those stories. Like, what kind of stories should we be telling? What kind of color palette should we be using when we tell those stories? And then on the other trends that we'll get into hopefully later, audio, what's the audio trends? What about when we talk about fonts and visual, like sort of animation trends on screen? All those things kind of play together into what we as creatives need to be delivering to stay relevant.
Yeah. Right? And I think there's 2 things going on too, in terms of what these trends can offer creatives, which is clearly, as we're talking about with our 4 visual trends today, we see how the events of this past year have absolutely kind of shifted the driving relevant priorities, values, and topics, right? How that has translated into imagery that really resonates now and throughout 2021. But the other thing that we'll see as we go into slightly more technical aspects of trends, especially like with the motion trends, is we start to see what we address is consumer expectations change, as consumers are fed, motion footage, design through different platforms and social channels. So consumer expectations shift as they're seeing cool motion, cool graphics. And so we're always staying ahead of that curve to educate creatives. Like, look, this is what consumers expect to see now with your graphics, with your footage. So that would be really interesting to go into too.
Yeah. There's so much. It's so deep.
There is.
So as we wrap this up, so folks that are listening and watching this, what's an action that they can take? One of the things that I'm taking away from this conversation is the eye opener of, there's a lot of stuff to shoot around me, and normally I think around me is mundane because it's always around me, but everyone else is kind of in the same boat. So it makes sense to kind of document that. Is that a good direction? Like, hey, this is how I make, this is a shot of the process of making coffee in the morning, or washing dishes, folding laundry.
Home life. Home life routines. And that's what I keep saying is that, you only hear me today, but a lot of people I work with keep hearing me say that routines have really become our new rituals, daily life, like I said, and you just said, shooting where you are is very much in demand because so many different audiences and viewers will connect to that. They'll see their own aspects of their own life in that. And that's really what's in demand right now. And then with mood boosting color, that really is just kind of a key into, look, people are really feeling like their lives are, forgive my pun, but metaphorically, our lives have become kind of monochrome. And really adding that boost of like a spectrum of color, really, the viewers are just finding that exciting and uplifting. And so that's another element that think of how you're using color. If you really want to inspire and engage, we're seeing that as just so powerful right now. Those are really kind of the two takeaways.
I love it. I love it. So as we wrap up, if two sides of a coin, if photographers and creatives want to get involved and submit work into the Adobe Stock library, what's the process for that? And then the other side is, if I'm a brand or someone that needs imagery like that, how do I get this stuff?
Well, if you go to stock.adobe.com, you can just start searching right away. And on our website, there's a whole page for people who want to contribute. You can start contributing right away.
Okay. Awesome. Very cool.
Yeah, it's an open collection, and we can always, talk more in depth about that. But Adobe is, as you know, very supportive of creatives and trying to help creatives, monetize their work. And so you can literally go on the site and just see how to start uploading your imagery.
Okay. All right. Well, that's a future interview. We're going to go into the inner workings of Adobe Stock and how to get involved in it and all of that stuff. Caring feeding of Adobe Stock we'll get into.
That's right. I like that.
Very cool. Brenda Milis, thank you. Thank you so much for doing this. I appreciate you. It's been, every time we talk, my brain explodes with ideas and different things.
Good way.
Good way. Yeah. You were, as you're talking, I'm looking around my office like, that would be a good shot. What if I did that? So mission accomplished. Thank you. Thank you for doing that.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
This is Twitter.